So have you ever had any big project failures? Oh yeah. Okay, well we're going to talk to the folks here about it, so let's get going. So Lynn, great. I'm glad that you could take a little bit of time and just join me here in the lodge, our fantastic office meeting space, just to talk a little bit about what your greatest project failure was and what you learned from that. This is Lynn Labieniec, CEO, and my partner here at Beaconfire. I'm Michael Servino, and we're going to have a little bit of a chat, so here we go. Lynn, what was your greatest project failure?
I would say that it has to do with giving the client what they said they wanted and sort of taking that at face value and not really understanding that somebody may say that they want something, may not have fully thought through what the problem is in the first place, and in effect what they need is something completely different. So I would say that that's probably the biggest failures have come from projects that started that way.
So if you can think back on those projects, and I know that they were beyond just earlier in your career. We've had some here. Why don't you share with everybody what 2 or 3 red flags were that you caught and learned to catch, or that you didn't catch that you should have?
I think one thing would be the client not really being able to articulate what the impetus is for the need. Mm-hmm. If they come to us and they say, oh, we want a content management system, back in the day when those were sort of newfangled things, we would get calls saying, we gotta have a CMS. Well, why? What is it that you're trying to accomplish here? And it's a great product and is certainly needed in a lot of projects. In some cases at that point in time it would be a big expense, a big project, and they didn't really need it when you sort of dug into what the problem was. So I think that's one thing. If they can't clearly articulate what the problem is that they're trying to solve, then you need to spend a little time digging into it and not just going off and saying, okay, we'll go build that and we'll give it to you and you'll be all happy. The client not asking enough questions as you're working with them. Oftentimes that means they're not really, either you're not being clear enough about what it is, or they are afraid to ask, they don't understand it, you may not be giving them what they want, and they don't want to be confrontational about it, so they just sort of accept it and keep moving on. And
do you ask different questions now to elicit that feedback?
Yeah.
What give us an example of 1 or 2 that you might ask now, or that if they're just a person you're working with is nodding their head and saying, I get it, but they don't have that level of engagement.
Yeah.
What's a question or 2 that you might ask them?
Well, I would probably ask them a little bit more about how they envision that particular, let's say that we're proposing to build a particular type of website for a client, or build out some new functionality that's going to be pretty complicated and it has a pretty big price tag on it, and the client is just sort of agreeing with things as we go along, but not really, you get the sense that they don't quite understand what it is we're talking about. Then I think I would sort of dig into it a little bit and say, well, how do you think this is going to benefit your constituents? How do you think your staff are going to feel about this? Do you think that you're going to be able to support the actual project long term with the staffing it might require? Maybe it's a blog or something that they thought that they needed to have.
Okay, so asking a couple of questions that focus on the implications, not just what it is, they may understand that, but the implications of what this is for sustaining or supporting or staff impact.
Yeah, and value. Do they think this is really going to bring the value that they were
will this make the
for?
change?
Right.
So a good deal of this is about understanding the business objectives up front, and then tying whether it's features or functions or business process back to those objectives, and then circling back with the client to say, here was your problem, we think we understand that, here's a potential solution, let's evaluate whether that hypothetically meets the objectives, if you will. Okay? Let me ask you this question. What have you changed in the way you consult? given these early experiences and recent experiences, if there have been some, of how you approach consulting or key things that you look for up front or in the midst of a process? What do you do differently now?
There are three main things that I do differently now, and that I try to make sure, even when we're in a rush, which sometimes happens, that we take the time to stop and do these things. One of them is making sure the objective for what we're trying, the overall objective, not we're just trying to build a website, but we're trying to change the brand. We're trying to increase the number of constituents who actually download a particular type of information, who actually interact with the site in a particular way, who actually give money or do something specific, to make sure that we're stopping to really make sure that everybody's clear on what those outcomes are intended to be. The second thing is making sure that all of the key stakeholders are represented, and that we know who the influencers are and who the spoilers are, because we need all of those people in the group, and we need to give them a chance to be heard, and we need to have a chance to work with them and bring them along, so that if we're making decisions along the way that aren't really what they wanted, they understand why we didn't go down that path, and understand how it fits into the overall picture.
Okay.
Otherwise, once the project's done, they will just ignore it. They will continue to be spoilers about it, and can really scupper the project.
Interesting.
In a big way. And the third thing is making sure everyone understands what the bigger picture is in terms of implications. We've a number of times have had clients ask us to implement some sort of blogging type of feature, and when you start to dig into what the staffing implications might be, you're going to need somebody who can actually produce this content on a regular basis. Many times that project will get tabled because they just don't have the staffing available to do it. So making sure that everybody's clear on what's going to be needed to really make that work, to really achieve those objectives. There are going to be staffing implications, there are going to be money implications, there are going to be process implications. How are you going to deal with comments? You know, how negative comments are going to crop up. Are you going to be okay with that? Can you live with it? Or, you know, are you going to have somebody monitor it? And if you're going to monitor it, who's going to do that? How much time is it going to take? Do they have the bandwidth to do it?
So make sure that you've got everybody on board.
Yep.
Make sure the objectives are clear and that
Yep.
you're circling back to everybody on board.
And communicating.
Oh, we got to talk to clients.
Yeah.
Well, great. This has been delightful. Thanks for your insights.
You're welcome.
As I learn something new from you every day, this is one of those instances. So thanks for joining us here, Beaconfire Wire. I'm pretty excited that next month we're going to be doing this not from here in the lodge, but we're going to be doing it from the Beacon Lounge at South by Southwest. So I look forward to catching you then. Cheers.